Snow drifted quietly over New York City, settling in thin layers along the sidewalks. Christmas lights blinked in store windows. People hurried past each other with gloved hands and lowered heads. But 4 stories above, in a cold apartment without heat, a young woman moved with urgency. Rachel Cole, 28, tied her honey blonde hair back and zipped her thin coat. She glanced toward the couch where her 5-year-old daughter lay, curled under a worn blanket. "Lucy," she said softly, "time to go." The little girl stirred cheeks flushed with fever. She wore a soft red dress with white bows at the cuffs, her favorite reserved for special days. Rachel wrapped a scarf around Lucy's neck and gently picked her up. "Just the clinic, then we'll rest," she promised. Rachel worked as a temporary line worker at Pure Harvest Foods, a frozen food company in Queens. Her job packing boxes in the cold room was grueling. Her contract was ending soon, and her supervisor had little patience for personal emergencies. Rachel was barely holding on. At the clinic, the doctor frowned after examining Lucy. "High fever, likely viral. She needs fluids and rest." Rachel nodded. Outside, she took out her phone to notify the factory. Before she could dial, it rang. "Miss Cole." A flat voice said, "Mr. Sebastian Thorne, our CEO, wants to meet with you today, 10011th floor." Rachel's heart dropped. "Today?" "Yes. Be on time." She stared at Lucy. No sitter, no family nearby, no time. An hour later, Rachel arrived at Pure Harvest's headquarters with Lucy. The receptionist looked, but said nothing. On the 10th floor, Rachel guided Lucy to a cushioned bench outside the CEO's office. "Sit here, sweetheart," Rachel said. "Do not move. Mommy will be just 5 minutes." Lucy nodded and hugged her stuffed bunny. Rachel smoothed her daughter's dress and turned away, her hands trembling. She waited outside the office, stomach in knots. Were they going to fire her? Would they mention her absences? Desperate, she slipped into the restroom and called a college friend. "Could I borrow just a little? Until next month?" she whispered. A pause, then a no. Rachel ended the call, pressed the phone to her chest, and closed her eyes. Silent tears slid down her cheeks. She wiped them away and returned to her seat. But Lucy had seen from across the hallway the little girl had watched her mother cry. And though she could not understand everything, she understood enough. She had seen her mother go hungry, so she could eat, stay up late, walk to work in the snow. If her mother lost her job, Christmas would vanish too. Lucy looked at the big office door. Gold letters spelled out Sebastian Thorne, CEO. She slipped quietly off the bench, clutched her bunny, straightened her dress, and walked across the hall. No one noticed the small child approach the door. She knocked. Inside, Sebastian Thorne was reviewing sales projections. "Come in," he said absently. He glanced up and froze. A child stood in the doorway. Red dress, tangled curls, red cheeks. She clutched a bunny and stared straight at him. "Please don't fire my mommy," she said softly. "She's the best. She works hard. She even skipped dinner last night so I could have chicken soup." The room fell silent. Sebastian stood slowly, unsure how to respond. At that moment, Rachel rushed in. Her face was pale. "Lucy." But Sebastian had already stepped around the desk. He knelt eye level with the little girl. "What's your name, little one?" he asked gently. Lucy hesitated, then answered quietly. "Lucy." Sebastian gave a small smile. "That's a beautiful name." Sebastian blinked, still kneeling before the little girl who had just walked into his office and shattered the rhythm of his tightly controlled world. Her voice, soft but unwavering, echoed in his mind. "Please don't fire my mommy." He had faced angry shareholders, press scandals, and international negotiations. But this child, in a red dress with trembling lips and hopeful eyes, left him speechless. He cleared his throat. "Lucy, is it?" She nodded. "Yes." Rachel stood frozen by the doorway, flushed and breathless, clearly mortified. "I'm so sorry. She must have wandered in." "I will." Sebastian raised a hand without looking away from the child. "Let her speak." Rachel hesitated, torn between discipline and disbelief, then stepped back slowly. Lucy hugged her bunny tighter and took another step toward Sebastian. Mommy is always tired, she said, eyes still on his, but she smiles for me. Sebastian didn't move. The girl's words were strikingly clear for someone her age. She says if she loses her job, Lucy added her voice, catching just slightly. We can't have Christmas. Something in Sebastian's chest shifted. It was not dramatic, not a thunderclap, just a quiet pull, the kind you don't expect until it's too close to ignore. He inhaled slowly, standing up now, but still looking at the girl like she had just opened a door he had long since locked. Rachel, standing nearby, whispered, Lucy, sweetie, let's not. But Lucy had already reached into her little backpack. She pulled out a crumpled piece of folded paper edges, torn and smudged with crayon. She held it out to Sebastian with both hands. I made this. He took it gently, unfolding the drawing. It was childlike, of course. Uneven stick figures, big heads, exaggerated eyes, but it told a story far more grown up than any child should have to tell. This is Mommy, Lucy explained. She's working. The drawing showed Rachel at a table with a laptop, scribbled lines around her head, maybe hair, or maybe a mess of stress. Across the room, behind thick black lines that looked like a wall, or maybe just space, sat a small figure, Lucy, on the floor, clutching a toy, surrounded by gray shading. And that's me, she said quietly. I wait for her a lot. Sebastian swallowed. His eyes lingered on the drawing longer than he intended. There was something haunting about the isolation of the tiny figure in the corner, and something deeply human in the way the child had drawn her mother. Eyes big and tired hands, reaching for keys on a laptop, and a small heart on her chest. He looked up. Rachel's face was flushed with embarrassment, but there was a quiet dignity in how she held herself. She didn't offer excuses. She just stood there, letting the drawing speak for her. Sebastian broke the silence. Why do you bring her to work? Rachel's jaw tightened a little, but her voice was steady. I don't usually. Today was an emergency. I couldn't find a sitter on such short notice. I have no family here. Sebastian nodded slowly, but his eyes were still on the drawing. Rachel added, I do not have the money to hire a regular babysitter, but I've never been late. Not once. There was no bitterness in her tone, no apology, just facts spoken by someone who had no time for anything else. Sebastian folded the drawing with care, far more gently than he had unfolded it, and placed it on the edge of his desk. He looked at Lucy again. You love your mommy very much. Lucy beamed. She's my favorite person. A corner of Sebastian's mouth lifted slightly. Not a full smile, not yet, but something warmer than anything his staff had seen in years. Thank you for sharing this with me, he said softly. Both of you. Rachel exhaled, as if she had been holding her breath since the moment they walked into the building. Sebastian turned to his assistant, who stood at a distance, silent and wide-eyed. Clear my next hour. Then to Rachel, he said, let's talk. The room had settled into a fragile kind of quiet. Rachel sat across from Sebastian, now Lucy safely in the care of a kind receptionist who offered her warm apple juice and crayons. For the first time that day, Rachel was still, but her hands remained folded tightly in her lap, her knuckles pale. Sebastian leaned back in his chair, a man known for his calculated calm, yet visibly stirred. In front of him lay Rachel's personnel file, thinner than most. No glossy recommendations, no high-level credentials, just a short resume, typed neatly, and a few pages of basic employment history. He tapped the folder lightly. Tell me something. Rachel, he said, voice low, but steady. What did you study before this? She looked up, surprised by the question. Food business management. With a focus on product marketing, Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Not exactly the background for factory line work. Rachel's smile was faint. It wasn't the plan. He waited. She took a slow breath, choosing her words carefully. I got into state college on a scholarship. Full ride. I was doing well. I had a mentor internship options lined up. One of them with a baby food company. Actually, her eyes flickered. But during my second year, I found out I was pregnant. Sebastian's expression didn't change, but he didn't look away. I was engaged. We thought we had it figured out. She continued, voice steady, but soft. But when I told him, he disappeared, changed his number. His family blocked me. My parents said I had shamed them, told me to fix it or leave. Sebastian's brow furrowed slightly. I chose to leave, Rachel said simply. I couldn't finish school. I worked at a diner during the day and cleaned offices at night. I learned to stretch $15 into 5 meals. I memorized grocery prices and coupon cycles, but I kept reading. I kept learning. He tilted his head. Learning. She nodded. Every product label, every shelf design in every supermarket. I still follow market trends. I study customer behavior when I stand in checkout lines. I keep a notebook of ideas just in case. Sebastian looked down at her resume again. Basic work history, waitress, delivery, assistant housekeeping, inventory temp, all short-term, all survival-based. But as he turned the final page, something caught his eye. A short note at the bottom, handwritten in clean, careful script. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just asking for a real chance. He stared at the words for a long moment. There was no plea in them. No bitterness, no drama, just clarity. Rachel hadn't packaged herself as a victim. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was simply stating the truth and hoping someone might see beyond the paperwork. He glanced up again, his eyes sharper now. He saw it clearly. A woman who had lost everything and still stood tall. Someone who had every reason to quit, but refused to. Someone who never stopped trying to be better, even when no one was watching. You never gave up, he said quietly. Rachel looked down at her hands. I didn't have the luxury. Sebastian nodded once slowly. The silence stretched again, not awkward this time, but heavy with something real. He closed the folder carefully and set it aside. There was no dramatic gesture, no speech, just a shift in his gaze, a flicker of respect that hadn't been there before. And in that moment, Sebastian Thorne, CEO, strategist skeptic, saw not just a struggling single mother, but a woman with raw, unpolished potential, a fighter, a thinker, someone who belonged in a room where ideas mattered, not just in the back where boxes were sealed. He didn't say it aloud yet, but something inside him changed, something permanent. Sebastian sat alone in his office long after Rachel and her daughter had gone. The city buzzed beyond the tall windows, but inside, all was still. Rachel's file lay open on his desk. His eyes were fixed not on her resume, but on a single handwritten line at the bottom of the page. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm just asking for a real chance. He closed the folder carefully, as though it might break. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Emily, his assistant, peeked in. Everything all right, Mr. Thorne? Sebastian didn't look up. How many workers in packaging have submitted improvement suggestions in the past 6 months? Emily blinked. Suggestions? Maybe 3 or 4? And how many were actually used? She hesitated. 1 or 2 small ones, none credited. And Rachel Cole. She checked her tablet. She sent in 5. 3 were used by the floor manager. No record of her name. Sebastian leaned back, thoughtful. Draft a temporary transfer product development entry-level assistant 2-week trial. Emily stared. You're transferring her. He nodded once. His eyes rested briefly on the folded drawing Lucy had left behind. Crayon-lined stick figures, a moment he could not forget. No, he said softly. I'm giving her what she asked for. The next morning, Rachel entered the factory break room ready to clock in. A woman from HR was waiting near the time clock. Miss Cole, you've been reassigned. Starting today, please report to product development 10th floor. Rachel froze. There must be a mistake. I work in packaging. No mistake, the woman replied. CEO's directive. Rachel's breath caught. Sebastian Thorne. The woman gave a small smile and nodded. Rachel clutched her purse strap tighter. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. She didn't remember entering the elevator. But as the doors slid shut, tears filled her eyes. She had not been dismissed. She had been chosen. That evening, Rachel and Lucy, trudged up the apartment stairs, boots soaked with slush. Lucy leaned against her, half asleep. As they reached their door, Rachel stopped. A box sat waiting on the mat, wrapped in brown paper and twine. On top was a white envelope. To Lucy it read. Rachel opened it slowly. Inside was a soft teddy bunny, wearing a tiny scarf. Lucy gasped. "Mommy, he looks like the man from the office." Rachel pulled out a note written in blue ink. "To the bravest little girl I've ever met." Below it was a grocery store gift card, 2 weeks' worth of food. Lucy hugged the bunny, spinning in circles. Rachel lowered herself onto the couch, holding the card in both hands. Her throat tightened. No one had ever done something like this for them. Not with pity, but with kindness, with intention. Later that night, after Lucy had drifted off, Rachel sat by the window. Snow fell again, soft and steady. She held the bunny in her lap and looked out at the lights below. For the first time in years, she whispered, "I do not feel invisible." She turned to where Lucy slept, curled around the tiny bunny. And in that quiet December night, Rachel allowed herself something rare. Hope. Rachel stepped into the 10th floor office, her heart thudding in her chest. Everything here felt different. The bright windows, sleek desks, and walls lined with product sketches and nutrition charts. The space smelled faintly of coffee and ink. People moved with ease and confidence, speaking in a language Rachel hadn't heard since college. She lingered by the entrance, unsure where to go. A junior manager finally approached and handed her a binder. "This covers the current product cycle. You'll be shadowing the team, developing the kids' meals." The woman gave a polite smile and turned back to her screen. Rachel felt like an outsider who had wandered into the wrong room, but she stayed. That night, after Lucy fell asleep, Rachel opened her old laptop and dug out a binder of food science notes she had printed years ago. She scribbled pages of notes in a secondhand notebook with smudged corners and coffee stains. She watched tutorials on child nutrition and branding, pushing through the fatigue with quiet determination. At work, she listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and filled 2 full notebooks by the end of the week. Sebastian didn't speak to her, but he noticed. He checked in with Emily, asking for quiet updates. Not just about Rachel's work, but how she fit in. "She's green," Emily said once, "but she listens like she's starving to grow. She doesn't pretend to know things. She asks because she wants to learn." In the second week, Rachel was invited to a team strategy meeting. She had drafted a proposal for a toddler meal. Smaller portions, softer texture, less sodium, based on meals she had created for Lucy. When discussion opened, Rachel raised her hand and shared it, hesitating only slightly. Some team members looked skeptical. A nutritionist commented, "There's no formal testing, no clear demand." Rachel opened her mouth to reply, but Sebastian spoke first. If a single mother can feed her daughter on $4 a day while keeping it nutritious and appealing, he said, maybe we should let her finish. The room quieted. Rachel nodded, took a breath, and continued. She didn't cry, but she walked out of that meeting knowing someone had given her voice space to matter. She felt it again in the days that followed. When Lucy woke with a low fever, Rachel sent a message requesting to reschedule a small task. Minutes later, Sebastian's message came. "Family first, always. We'll manage the project later." On another day, after skipping lunch to finish a presentation, Sebastian's assistant quietly left a sandwich and a cup of peppermint tea beside her laptop, Rachel's favorite, which she had once mentioned in passing. No one said anything, but Rachel paused, took a sip, and let the warmth settle in her chest. At first, co-workers whispered behind her back, "She has a connection upstairs. This must be some special favor." But soon perceptions shifted. Rachel stayed late. She asked how she could help. When a junior designer file crashed at 11 p.m., Rachel stayed behind and rebuilt it with her. One evening, as she packed up, the designer turned to her and said, "I've never seen anyone learn this fast and still help the rest of us." Rachel smiled. "I'm just grateful to be here." Then one quiet Thursday, Rachel got home and opened her purse. Inside was a box of peppermint tea and a folded note in blue ink. "You're doing better than you think. ST." She held the note for a long time, tracing each letter with her thumb. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't flirtation. It was respect recognition. And for Rachel Cole, it was the first time being seen didn't come with judgment. Exactly 1 week before the product's national launch, Rachel was reviewing her presentation when her phone buzzed. A news alert flashed across the screen. Breaking Pure Harvest Foods product linked to infant illness. Her stomach dropped. The article was already spreading across social media. A photo of their toddler meal, Pure Harvest branding front and center, sat beneath a bold caption. "Unsafe for children." One mother speaks out. The post claimed a mother in Queen said her baby vomited and developed a rash after eating the new product Rachel had helped design. Screenshots from a private parenting forum echoed similar concerns. By noon, hashtags like "unsafe meals" and "Pure Harvest fail" were trending. At the office, tension filled the air. Employees whispered in corners. Screens showed news clips. The marketing team looked frantic. Sebastian called an emergency meeting. Rachel sat at the far end of the table, heart pounding. Sebastian entered, face unreadable. "We're not here to panic," he said. "We're here to find the truth. Rachel, walk us through the process." Rachel kept her voice steady. "The formula was tested and passed all safety checks. We used USDA-approved ingredients, and QA cleared the batches in question," a manager asked. "But what if it's a regional contamination? We piloted locally, right?" "I checked with QA," Rachel replied. "No flagged batches, no packaging errors." Sebastian remained silent, arms folded, listening. He didn't defend her, not once. After the meeting, Rachel hesitated at the door. Sebastian looked up. She turned back, hoping for reassurance. Instead, he stepped forward. "Tell me the truth. Could this be a mistake on your part?" The question hit her like ice water. "You think I'd risk children's safety?" she said, barely above a whisper. "After everything I have to ask," Sebastian said quietly. "This affects the board, our investors." Rachel stepped back. "I see. After all this, you still think I could have done this?" He didn't answer. She left without another word. Tears stinging her eyes, not from fear, but from betrayal. After that, everything shifted. No more quiet messages. No more peppermint tea. Only emails. Always through assistants. Rachel didn't reach out, and Sebastian didn't try. She didn't quit, but she stopped smiling at her desk. She did her work and went home. The spark was gone. Outside rumors grew louder. Media ran follow-ups. The company's stock dipped. Rachel was formally suspended pending clarification of claims. The memo was careful. No discipline, just reassignment. She could have walked away, but she didn't. Instead, she got to work. Rachel gathered data. She redesigned customer feedback forms and printed dozens. She started knocking on doors in neighborhoods that had stocked the product. Wearing borrowed shoes and a hand-me-down raincoat, she stood at subway exits with clipboards, waited outside daycares and laundromats, and asked strangers for a moment of their time. Most people ignored her. Some asked her to leave. Others gave her a chance. One woman asked, "Why are you doing this? Doesn't your company have PR people?" Rachel answered, "They do, but I need to know for myself." One rainy afternoon, a gated community guard refused to let her in. She waited outside in the drizzle, holding her clipboard, until a mother from inside recognized her from the news and quietly waved her through. That night, Rachel arrived home, soaked shoes squishing with each step. Her hands were blistered from carrying forms. Her feet ached, but she had 20 completed surveys. 19 were positive. Rachel collapsed onto her couch, exhausted. But beneath the weariness, something else stirred. Not rage, not despair, conviction. She would prove her innocence. Even if no one believed her, even if she had to do it alone. Rain poured over Brooklyn in cold, heavy sheets. Umbrellas scattered across crosswalks. But Rachel had none. Her coat was soaked flyers, limp in her hands, hair plastered to her cheeks. She approached a woman with a stroller raising her voice over the roar of tires. "Ma'am, would you be willing to fill out a short survey? Just a minute." The woman didn't stop. Rachel's breath came in cold gasps. Her fingers ached from the chill. She looked at the last few damp flyers in her bag. Just as she stepped off the curb to try again, a horn blared. A motorcycle shot toward her fast and reckless. She froze. Suddenly, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her back hard. She fell against a body, both of them hitting the sidewalk. Flyers flew across the wet pavement. Rachel gasped, heart-pounding rain in her eyes. Sebastian soaked through his coat, heavy with water. He didn't speak. He helped her up, opened a compact umbrella, and held it over both of them. What are you doing here?" she managed to say. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up what flyers he could, pulled a few dry ones from her bag, and stood beside her. Then he turned to a passerby. "Hi," he said. "We're collecting feedback on a children's food product. Just a quick survey." Rachel stared at him, speechless. Then she smiled. Small, uncertain, but real. They worked together in silence as the storm faded. When the crowds thinned, they found shelter beneath a closed bookstore's awning. Rachel huddled inside her coat. Sebastian stood close, a plastic bag of ruined flyers at his feet. "I should have told you sooner," he said quietly. "I started an investigation the day the complaint came in." Rachel looked up, startled. "The woman who made the claim," he continued, "was a disgruntled ex-employee for a competitor. She was paid to fabricate everything. The rash was photoshopped. The baby never even ate our product." Her lips parted. "You're serious. I have the proof. Legal, already preparing the release." She leaned back against the brick wall. The relief was staggering, but there was pain too. "You asked me," she said softly, "if I had done it." He looked at her face, full of regret. "I know," he said, "and I was wrong. I didn't doubt you. I doubted whether I had the strength to defend you if this spiraled. I thought keeping my distance would protect us both, but it only hurt you." She looked down, rain dripping from her lashes. Sebastian stepped closer. "I asked the wrong question." He hesitated. "I should have asked, do you want me to stand with you?" Rachel looked up. Everything she'd carried, fear-hurt resilience, was there in her eyes, but so was something gentler. Hope. Sebastian didn't touch her. He didn't have to. His voice was steady quiet. "From now on," he said, "I won't let anyone put a question mark after the word trust again." The street bustled around them, traffic people puddles reflecting headlights. But in that space, there was silence. Understanding, no confessions, no drama, but it was a love story, just the same. The next morning, headlines filled the business world. Pure Harvest's controversy. CEO and developer reveal fabricated complaint. Photos of Rachel in the rain clipboard, in hand-soaked but determined, flooded social media. Her story resonated. Her strength inspired. Her quiet dignity moved millions. People started calling her the honest girl in the pink raincoat. And somewhere over the city, the clouds finally began to part. 1 year later, winter returned to New York City, with its familiar hush of falling snow and glowing lights strung across buildings. Inside the headquarters of Pure Harvest Foods, warmth buzzed with celebration. Rachel Cole now sat behind the desk of her new office. The title on the door read, Director of Family Product Innovation. It was a modest space, no fancy decor, no designer furniture, but on the wall behind her hung a simple wooden frame containing a crayon drawing. It showed a woman at a desk, a little girl beside her, and a small bunny with a bow tie. Lucy's signature, scrawled in purple, said, Mommy at work. I help. Rachel smiled at it every morning. She had worked tirelessly over the past year, launching a new line of healthy, affordable meals for families built from both data and heart. Her journey had gone from factory floor to executive leadership, and it was no miracle. It was earned inch by inch. Across the hallway, laughter echoed from Sebastian Thorne's office. There, at a small desk tucked into the corner, sat Lucy, now 6 years old, with a pair of pink plastic glasses perched on her nose and a clipboard in hand. She scribbled in serious concentration, while Sebastian in a crisp gray suit typed beside her. She called him Bossman, sometimes my protector. Everyone in the company knew their story by now. It wasn't whispered gossip. It was quiet admiration, not a workplace romance, but something deeper. A bond born not from flirtation, but from fire trust in the tiny hands of a brave little girl in a red dress. No one questioned it. That night, the company gathered for its annual Christmas gala. The event space sparkled with golden lights and garlands, a grand tree at the center of the room, glowing with ornaments crafted by employees' children. Rachel stepped in, wearing a deep red velvet dress, her hair soft around her shoulders. Lucy, in a fluffy red gown and sparkly shoes, danced excitedly near the tree. Sebastian arrived moments later, greeting people briefly, before making his way across the room to join them. He didn't need to say a word. When Rachel looked up and their eyes met, it was enough. As music swelled and the room quieted, Sebastian stepped onto the stage with a glass in hand. He looked out across the faces of his team, his company, and then down at Rachel and Lucy. 1 year ago, he began. I didn't believe in much beyond spreadsheets and deadlines. I believed in structure, logic, control. He paused, then smiled. But then a little girl in a red dress walked into my office and asked me not to fire her mother. Laughter rippled gently through the crowd. That girl changed everything, and her mother. She reminded me what resilience looks like. She showed me that trust isn't a metric, it's a choice. Sebastian raised his glass to trust, and to people who never give up. The room erupted in applause. Rachel blinked back emotion. Lucy clapped loudly beside her, not quite understanding the weight of the words, but knowing something special had just happened. Later, as the party wound down and the snow fell softly outside, Rachel, Sebastian, and Lucy walked out together beneath the twinkling canopy of Christmas lights. Lucy held both their hands, skipping slightly between them. She looked up and asked in her small, hopeful voice, "Mommy, do we have a family now?" Rachel glanced at Sebastian. He looked down, his expression tender, then leaned in and whispered, "We always did. We just needed to find it." But the story didn't end under those Christmas lights. 6 months later, Pure Harvest hosted a different kind of celebration. This time, it wasn't for a product launch, but for a new beginning. In a small chapel covered in winter ivy, Rachel walked down the aisle, her hand firmly holding Lucy's. Sebastian waited at the altar, looking at them not as a CEO, but as a man who had finally found his home. When they exchanged vows, Sebastian knelt down to Lucy's level and presented her with a tiny silver charm bracelet. "To my partner in courage," he whispered. Today, Rachel leads a mentorship program for single mothers within the company, proving every day that talent is everywhere. It just needs a chance. And every Christmas, the first ornament they hang on their tree is a small, laminated crayon drawing of a little girl in a red dress standing between a mommy and a boss man holding their hands tight. Thank you for journeying with us through this story. Life often takes us on unexpected paths, and sometimes the most beautiful chapters are written after the hardest storms. I hope this story reminded you that you are seen, you are valued, and you are never truly alone. If this message touched your heart, please leave a like and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. I'd love to hear your voice in the comments below. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed everything? Don't forget to subscribe so we can continue sharing these moments together. Until next time, take care of yourself.